All right, welcome back, everyone. Now it's time for the most energetic part of our event, where we have three experts that are going to discuss how to evaluate and select data mesh and data fabric products. I will introduce you to the panelists and hand over to Wayne to moderate. Rick Hall has spent nearly 3 decades in the analytics industry, including designing and implementing over 100 systems and analytics products. Casey Lai has led global operations and product management for both startups and Fortune 500 companies, including most recently Waterline Data. Casey, did I pronounce your last name right?
You did, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you're a frequent guest, so I'm glad I got it right. Matt Fuller has worked in the data analytics and infrastructure space for the past 15 plus years at companies such as Starburst, Teradata, Adapt, HP, and Vertica. So we highly recommend you to submit questions during the panel. We've also got a lot that came in during the keynote. I'm going to work to ingest those into the discussion today. Okay, Wayne, over to you.
Yeah, I should just say to further the introductions that Rick, raise your hand. You're from Coginity, CEO. Casey, CEO of Prometheum. And Matt, you're the co-founder and CTO of Starburst, right?
Co-founder and VP product.
VP of product, close. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's dive right in here. So Matt, I'm going to start with you. Why is everyone talking about data products today? You saw that from the chart in my keynote.
Yep.
What do you think a data product is in the primary characteristics?
Yeah. So I guess I'll address the first part, why people are talking about it. I think, if we look over the last several years, just kind of the number of data sources and data repositories have just grown, dramatically as the number of applications grew, data producers grew, the array of customers and use cases, everything's just expanding and getting a lot more complicated, not less. And then so, naturally you want to run analytics on this data. So you're creating, these brittle pipelines, complex pipelines, things are just getting messier. So just putting everything kind of in one place is not practical. It's fool's gold, I guess. And so this is where like data mesh, comes to the rescue. And at the heart of data mesh is data products. And, this is just like kind of the new way of thinking about things. Is there's the technology, but there's the people and process aspects as well. But data products really allow you to apply kind of best practices for managing and consuming the data, really just treating it like a product, like anything else. And packaged in a way that allows you to easily discover it, understand it, consume it, and actually ultimately trust the product itself. So those are kind of the why I believe everyone's talking about data products and what I believe the data product is.
Yeah, it seems that of all the things that the mesh has put out in the marketplace, people have glommed onto the data product aspect of it the most. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why I was mentioning we talk about data mesh, but data product is really that heart of it that just kind of makes this all tie together.
Yeah, I like the way I think you phrased it. The data product help you implement the best practices for building these things. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, so Rick, let's go to you. What are the major challenges that your clients are facing building data products today? And what kind of tools and capabilities can facilitate the development and delivery of data products?
Yeah, so we provide a collaborative workspace for engineers and analysts to build and access data. And they range in all kinds of customers, from really big customers with thousands of users who have the kind of distributed problem that Roche has mentioned, to small companies. And they really range in terms of their adoption of these modern data practices and things like data mesh and data fabric. But what they all have in common is challenges in delivering quality data and analytics when business is changing all the time. So I really put the challenges that they're wrestling with in 3 categories. One is ownership, and I think that's the biggest issue associated with data products, is creating ownership so we create quality data. The second is how to really trace data and deal with quality throughout its journey. And then finally, I would put empowerment of the business team. So it's one thing to think about data. We ultimately have to think about analytics and how that data is being used. And we need to think about empowerment there as well. So I think there's both organizational and technical challenges here. On the organizational side, I'm complete agreement. We need data product ownership, and we need data product owners because we have quality data problems. I also think it's really critical to think about how we're going to create empowerment and collaboration. What that means technically, I think, is that people need access to data wherever it lives. It's not all in one place. That's, just the reality that particularly large organizations face, but I think it's true for small as well. And I think we need tooling to build and govern, our data assets, data products. And that means, great data workspaces. It means traceability, lineage, and metadata. It means the ability to build in testing. It means collaboration, and it means versioning and the ability to promote things to standards. And we need a means of discovering and accessing and utilizing that data, which means appropriate security. It means discoverability. It means the ability to utilize the data in any way that they need to, and to compose it with other data assets.
Great. Well, yeah, that's all wonderful stuff. Thank you. Casey, I talked a lot about data stores, data marketplaces. Where do you think is the best way for people to find data products? In a catalog, given your history at Waterline, data store, what do you think? What's your opinion on this subject?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is it depends, right? In terms of kind of who the persona is and also kind of what you're looking for, right? So I think catalogs can be helpful if you're a rather sophisticated user and with enough hints you can figure out where else to go. Because the challenge that I think what's happened in recent years, last few years, that's kind of made it difficult for catalogs to be that single place to find everything is that catalogs used to be the only place where you got all the metadata, right? And so that was the best place to find things because you have all this descriptive metadata. But actually what's kind of cool and what's interesting in the last few years that's happened is you have so many other tools now that generate metadata. That's useful metadata. I mean, BI tools generate them, ETL tools, observability tools generate them, and so forth. And so what we find is that to have like good data consumption and govern data consumption, it's hard for the catalog to keep up because a lot of the metadata now actually resides outside of the data catalog, right? But if you're like a pretty sophisticated power user and you're only working within like a certain subset of the data, like you'll never go beyond one data store, like say Snowflake and one beyond, one or two schemas. Catalog's probably pretty okay, right? For you to kind of find what you want, it's limited. But if we're talking about kind of these concepts you're bringing up about kind of, federated access and you want to be able to find and build products regardless of where they live, I think that's where catalogs get a little bit challenging, right? Because of what I just talked about, the metadata not always being there. And also when you're doing that type of exploration work, there's an element where you need to see the data, where you need to see, well, does this look right? And that's where catalogs are challenging because they don't have the data access. And so that kind of shifts that out of the catalogs and into something more maybe like a data marketplace. But a data marketplace, have to keep in mind is in order for that to be effective, you really need the marketplace to only have trusted, curated, and endorsed data. So that way it doesn't screw up who's consuming. And typically, the people who would go to a marketplace are not going to be as, the sophisticated power users. So you really want to put guardrails, if you will, so that way people don't get in trouble. And to do that, right, that means it's also different type of data discovery. That means the data products or the output and consumables have gone through some rigor, right, in terms of really making sure that they work, that they're trusted, and you can actually verify where everything is.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that not every data asset in a catalog is going to be certified, right? We have stewards who govern the catalog who go in and decide which of those assets get that stamp of approval. But in a data store, and I was kind of making this case, every one of those assets needs to be certified. I mean, that's what a product is. It is standardized and certified that's going to deliver as promised. So, but Matt, let me go back to you. I talked a lot about bridging organizational boundaries. What do you think is the best way to foster the free flow of data across those boundaries and get people to collaborate around data?
Yeah. So yeah, I think just kind of going back to, what are some best, practices, and kind of choosing those that work for you. So I think, you can kind of follow the processes and practices of what's outlined in data mesh, but there are also kind of tools and products out there that could kind of help assist with this. Starburst could be, one of those. But really looking for a product that can, help you search and discover and trust the data. So, things like, data products that you can search, but also apply and govern access control or permissions on, so you don't have to create a mess of, varying data products that have, slightly different, permissions on them, making it very difficult to find, and ultimately people just aren't going to trust, and it's going to be very hard to share those. Providing kind of rich metadata on top of these data products so that it's the thing that you're looking for. And you were kind of mentioning earlier, like how do you certify these things? If there were tools or products, that could monitor the usage of these, right? And the ones that are just most used and loved and trusted, it's kind of like has this like social aspect to it where, those ones kind of implicitly become certified. And then you can, based on usage, monitor ones and sunset those to kind of avoid that swamp. So those are some of the characteristics I think would help with that. And then ultimately, like, you just want that Amazon-like experience of the same way you buy a product on Amazon.com, like searching that with data products. You could build all of this internally, or maybe that could be a lot of engineering work. So there are tools and products out there, that could help. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Okay, great. There's a lawnmower outside my window. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Yeah.
You can.
You didn't coordinate with the gardener, Wayne, when you're doing this webinar?
Yeah, they always catch me by surprise. So I want to ask Rick a question. Then Kevin, maybe you can inject a question from the audience here. So Rick, I talked about data mesh and data fabric, and I made a case that they're different but symbiotic. Do you agree with that? Do you have a strict definition yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do agree with that. They both came about to address kind of the same problem, right? Which is data's everywhere. The centralized approach to data isn't working. Data fabric came about it as a technical solution, right? An architecture. Data mesh came about is this kind of socio-technical mix of both. The most important thing to me about mesh is the data product, right? And data ownership, right? And, Matt said that, and I agree with him 100%. I think ultimately we need to merge these languages together, because I think that a lot of people are confused. And, you go back to your survey about what are people working on, what they're working on is modernizing their ability to access data, right? So they need data, they need to access distributed data, they need to know that the data is of high quality, and then they need to be able to use it and combine it in different ways. So ultimately, to me, I think there's a couple of principles, right? Data is a product. I think everybody agrees we need access to quality data. And, a lot of organizations don't have it. I also think we need to address empowerment. We need people at the edge to be able to use that data, and we need to foster collaboration. And then we need this governance thing, which we think of as curation, where the best data becomes available and becomes published and standardized. And so I think the two really need to be merged. I think there's great ideas in both cases. But I think for us to really revolutionize the business, we need to adopt a common language.
Yeah, that makes sense. Seems fair to me. Kevin, any questions from the audience? I know you got a lot, but
Yeah. Some great commentary that I think is really going to feed into the takeaways, Wayne. I think we've got 40 comments that I've captured here. Probably people see me typing. One of the questions that came up both during this session and then during the keynote was for specific examples of data products. We got some great color commentary from Roche, but perhaps the panelists could talk about vertical specific examples of data products and the level of detail that was required to really make it a product. So I'll treat that openly. If you want us to point at folks, we can do that too.
So for me, I would just say, first of all, in every domain, there's a granular set of data products, right? So the thing that I think has happened with analytics is a lot of times we don't know the usage of data up front, right? So one of the big problems we've had is that we tried to create these data warehouses where we built in analytics and we built BI solutions that address specific needs. So I think data products need to be granular. We see that in every industry we're working in. They need to be discoverable. They need to be readable. Those are really kind of critical components. So, it might be store sales in a retail environment. That's certainly one we see. But the key thing for us is separating the development of kind of granular data products from this collaboration around the use of that data because we don't know how it's going to be used up front.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of vendors particularly talking about data components or analytic components that are building blocks for bigger things, right? And if you can give people, especially business people, access to these building blocks in a point and click, no code environment, they can build their own data products. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but it's along the same lines.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think we need components and we need to be able to assemble them, right?
Yeah.
And, people at the edge need to be able to do that. And, we need central data teams or distributed data teams to create quality data. And then we need to get people using that data and building on it in ways that we don't know about up front.
I think one of the if I think about kind of how customers are consuming different data products and the products that are successful that versus the products that are not successful, one thing that jumps out in mind is products that are successful have a big characteristic of integration, and can't find a better word, and I don't mean like data integration. What I mean is that you can see how it all ties together, right? We're very good at, the industry is very good at creating disjointed outputs, right? Here's the data set. You have no idea where it came from. You have no idea what here's the data set. Here's a query, same thing. Here's a dashboard, same thing, right? And only a few people can kind of figure out kind of how they're actually related. And so where I'm seeing kind of successful data products is if you can actually see how it's actually all built, right? Well, this dashboard was built because someone asked this question. This is what they can access. This is the data that went into it. This is how the data set that was used. This is where it came from. This is who governed it. And when you can see kind of all these, what used to be completely separate components come together to form that output, then you instantly get better trust, right? Because you don't have to go scour and search across 6 or different tools across 30 different people in the organization. It's there, unified, presented nicely for you. And so, it is part of that component concept, but it's making the components visible to kind of the final output, right? Which I think is really important, as opposed to we tend to just focus on the output, right? Oh, I got my store sales, I'm done. Well, no, I mean, you got store sales because this is what went into store sales. Take a look at it, verify it. And by the way, 5,000 people have liked it in the last 3 months and it's been used 30 times. And here's store sales has also been used to calculate store churn. So you have all this relevant context fully integrated together, right? And again, maybe integrate is not the best word, but I think that is actually a very important concept when people think about data products, because ultimately that's going to give people much better trust, comfort than saying, let's make a data steward go in. And only that data steward can ratify that. I think that's one of the failures of kind of being able to govern and endorse data, is it's not just up to one person's rubber stamp, right? You have to have that visibility and clarity of how all these pieces are actually put together.
We had one comment, Casey. Person said, what you call data integration is really data product coherence. So they wanted to give that.
That's a good term. That's a good term. If you, you're looking for a job in marketing, let me know.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more with Casey about, just seeing that lineage of how the data product was created is just so important. So you can trust it. The only additional thing I would say where I've seen data products work really great is, and it's related to that, is like being able to combine data from different sources. Like I think a lot of times, like the great data products, you're just a join away. You just need to be able to join in that additional data, whether you have usage data on the lake and you need to be able to join it with the customer billing info that happens to exist in an operational store somewhere. Each of those independently may not be great data products, but the combination of it is like, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts type thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. I think a lot of times, we forget about this old term master data, right? But, we need a way to link the customer in our payment system with the customer in our billing system or whatever it is. And whether that's another domain, that perhaps is a way to think of it, is that we need those domains also so that we can link this data effectively. And I totally agree with the lineage thing. I would also say that the downstream use, right, is going to evolve really quickly. So, you need to let analysts and users build stuff and then kind of promote it. I think that analytics is becoming more of an organic discipline than it is an engineered discipline, and the best work will be promoted to be reused.
All right, so I want to ask Casey a question, actually all of us, but to start with Casey on generative AI. We can't go do an event like this and not talk about the hottest technology out there. How is the data fabric going to help the implementation and adoption of generative AI?
Yeah, good question. So I think we all, unless you've been living under a rock, right, you probably all have generated, everyone's probably played around with different LLMs like ChatGPT, et cetera. And I think what we love about it is the simplicity, right, and the speed, right? And I think those are actually two very important components of data product that I think people kind of gloss over. Like when I give a very, very simple definition of data product, I usually involve it has to be fast and easy to consume. Because if it's not fast and easy to consume, I think you've missed it, right? Then you're going back 10, 20 years. And I think generative AI has pushed that, really pushed the boundaries of that. The challenge, though, generative AI, as some of you guys may have already figured out, is, well, I got two challenges. One is, how do I just give it all my data, right? Which you probably don't want to do that from a security perspective, one. But two, it kind of reminds me of the days of machine learning, where everyone's like, I just give it all your data and we'll train a machine learning model. And 18 months later, everyone's like, what the heck has happened? We have no idea what these data scientists are doing. I am really scared that we may be repeating history all over again, right, with generative AI. But so what you really need is a different kind of architecture, right? What Gen AI is really good at doing is if you give it trusted, endorsed, curated information, it's really good at figuring out kind of the natural language and how to use that to give you the answers. The problem, if you look at all our enterprise data stack, is, well, what if you have a different ETL tool, a different virtualization tool, a different catalog, 25 different data stores? How is Gen AI going to make sense of that in the next 36 months in your organization, right? And that's probably how long it's going to take. And so if you think about it, a data fabric is actually really ideal for Gen AI because it actually provides almost like a single, for lack of a better term, like API access, right, virtually, right? Because the fabric already connects to all your data sources. So Gen AI doesn't need to talk to all their data sources. It just needs to talk to the fabric. What other components does the fabric has? Well, it has the governance aspect. So it doesn't need to give Gen AI everything. It can just give the trusted, endorsed information, right? And if you have techniques like data virtualization, Well, that's even better because you actually never technically have to give data to Gen AI, right? So this is where it becomes really interesting of where data fabric can play is you can greatly accelerate the adoption of Gen AI by greatly enhancing the relevance of the data by only limiting it to trusted and endorsed data, not having to physically move the data, right? Using data virtualization techniques and the fabric itself being that single unifying infrastructure layer now means you actually have the ability to leverage Gen AI across all the different sources of data you have. So, that's how where we see kind of the fabric being really the nice missing component where enterprises can say, let's go ahead and accelerate our Gen AI adoption without having to worry about hallucinations and security and complexity.
Yeah, I agree with that, Casey. I think that without data products, generative AI is going to be just trouble. Quality data under the hood, and then Gen AI on top is really useful. I also think you need to be able to ingest domain knowledge, right, and domain definitions, right? So, it may be that a Gen AI model can calculate gross margin because it's just seen it a million times, but you might have a definition for store sales or lost opportunity or whatever. You want the model to be able to ingest that domain intelligence along with quality data, and then you really have something powerful.
Yeah, I would say two things on generative AI is in addition to data products, I think it could help with certain data engineering tasks as well, whether it's classifying data, tagging it, providing governance around it, and so on. And then the other thing is looking at these data products and helping provide those insights, to kind of highlight those as well as I think something generative. This is recorded. Gen AI.
No worries. So Matt, I had another question for you, and Kevin, maybe you could key up another audience question in a second.
Yeah, I got a good one, but go ahead.
Got a good one. Okay. I talked a little bit about the dangers of a data mesh being data silos, and that there might be a rush to, now we have a methodology that endorses us to go out and do our own thing, regardless of what anyone else is doing, and produce data products that really are for us. And if anyone wants to use them, fine, but we didn't design them for you. So how do you keep a data mesh or even a data fabric from becoming mush, and creating all these silos? Or maybe that's the answer. Maybe the data fabric is the answer, to data mush.
I mean, I think this is where data products, comes in, and making sure that you're monitoring them to make sure you're not creating that data swamp, like just maintaining these highly curated data product assets to kind of prevent that mush or swamp. And in many ways, I like to think about data products, or depending on the technology you're using, but in the case of Starburst, using Trino behind the scenes, we can create data products across a variety of different data sources. So it gives that illusion that the data is centralized in a single place without actually having to move it. So it kind of gives you that like best of both worlds approach.
Would you call those virtual data products?
Yeah, you could. Yeah. I haven't thought of that term in general, but yeah, you could consider it that way. Or they could be materialized within a data store using, a technology to do that. So even though it is, you create a data product, it almost creates a pipeline, automatically for you, kind of like a declarative pipeline via a data product to land it somewhere, or virtualize it, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I like the notion of a virtual data product because it in some ways it can be redefined on demand by the customer, right?
Yeah, or even if you decide to move the data from source system A to source system B, you can do that behind the scenes, and the consumers of the data products never even have to know.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
use it.
And I think one problem with data products is that when you define them and publish them, they're kind of fixed, and we really don't want that, because it's hard. Even if you do the best market research, you really don't know what customers want, and they don't know what they want until they actually see it. So if you have a virtual data product, you actually can give customers the ability to kind of filter that product to create just what they want, get just the data and records they want, or to even combine it with other data products to create a net new product that's really personalized to their needs. So to be honest, I didn't mention this in my keynote, but I do think virtual data products is the future.
I agree. I think the thing that I've always been humbled every single time is human behavior is always hard to change, right? So while I think that is the future, I think the reality is to prevent data products from turning into data mush or becoming a silo in and of itself is, like it or not, you have to work with the existing processes and the existing flow, right? And so what I mean by that is a lot of times you can't assume that people are going to change their behavior overnight. For example, where the data is consumed, right? So as much as we also use Trino under the hood, right? Like servers. As much as I'm a big fan of Trino, the reality and is sometimes people want to consume that somewhere else, right? And so you have to allow that, and that means it's not only a different data store, but it could be a different dashboard, a different BI tool, for example, and a BI tool, a dashboard could be a data product, right? To a certain persona, that is their data product. And so how do you maintain that visibility? Because I think that's what's going to be key in preventing the silos. You can't lose connection of the data product just because it leads your product. The minute you do that, you get into the same trouble that data catalogs have gotten into, right, for a long time, which is when you get that disconnect. So if you can still remain connected, say, fine, I created a data product, you didn't want to consume it in me, I materialized it somewhere else in Snowflake and Tableau and Power BI. But I know when it's being consumed. I know when people like it, don't like it. That I believe that universal and unified view, right, of how the products are actually consumed is what's going to prevent, right, from a silo being created. And also it's going to give you much better governance when you start seeing that downstream consumption, regardless if it's actually being consumed in your product or not, right? And that thing, that's that fabric, visual image of connectivity, I think that's where it's very, very powerful, right? To be able to have that continuous view and continuous lineage of where things are being consumed.
Yeah. So Kevin, back to you to ask the audience question, and then we only have like 10 minutes left. So I want to ask the whole panel some rapid fire questions at the end. So we want to leave some time for that.
Great. So rich commentary once again on this session. Thank you everyone for participating here. People like the mush concept, which is great. They like the concept, they like the term. There were two commentaries or questions that came up related to the market evolution slide that you had, moving from a lake in particular to a fabric or a mesh. And there seems to be, I tend to agree that there are many vestiges or elements of a data lake that can contribute to what we're talking about here. So an open question to the panelists here would be, what's the role of the data lake architecture or possibly a lakehouse architecture when we talk about a fabric and a mesh?
I think that's a question for Matt.
Yeah,
Matt, why don't we start with you? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I firmly believe that there's going to be a lot of data gravity in the lake today and in the future. So what I see and what we see a lot of our customers today is they absolutely have a data lake strategy where a lot of their data is born, but they often need to augment it with data that may exist in other sources. So, just take usage information from an application like event machine data. That's just large amounts of data that's being born in the lake, but you need to combine it with and join it back to identifiable information that's in a relational store somewhere. So I think you're going to see that center of gravity with the lake, but being able to kind of spoke out into the different sources is part of that strategy.
Yeah, I think a lake or a warehouse, right? It fits in nicely with data fabric strategy or data products. I don't think they should be competitive, right? Because I think there is for two reasons. One is there is a wealth of data and knowledge there. And two is you always have to, when you talk data products, like a big core part of that is actually security, access control, et cetera, right? So when you want to, in order to get data products to be consumable, they have to be operationalized. Well, a lot of that operationalizing actually happens. People build that into the lake. People build that into the warehouses, right? Things like fine-grained access control, security, role-based access. You don't want to throw that away, right? There's a lot of good stuff in there, right? And then the other part is also just when you have data of a certain scale, right? Laws of physics eventually can catch up to you. And as much as I love virtualization and everything, there's going to be times when we've seen just massive queries and data sets that it's better handled if it's all processed in one place, right? For those needs. And so I don't see them as ever being competitive. They shouldn't be. I think, a mesh or a fabric and the data product concept should greatly enhance and accelerate, right, the adoption of a data warehouse or data lake or data lake house. These days I have to say all three now.
So that's encouraging because you guys both agree then with what I said, which is a data fabric supplements what you've got, data warehouse, data lake, whereas a mesh in theory wants to torpedo anything that's centralized, which I don't think is going to work for most companies. But maybe Paul's going to prove us wrong, and the jury's still out there because I know he still has a warehouse. All right, I want to ask all of you guys a rapid fire question, maybe two, since we're coming down to the end here. You heard my keynote. I was being a little provocative there, so I'd love to know one thing you either really agreed with or really disagreed with. I'll put you on the spot here. And if you don't say anything, I'll just assume that you agreed with everything I said, and I should be nominated to be the head of this industry.
Wait. The problem is, if you ask my wife, I've got a 5-minute memory, right? So you said a lot of great things. They might be controversial. I may have forgotten already.
Well, that's encouraging because I used to teach history, and I remember I couldn't remember what I taught the week before. So I always thought there was something wrong with me, but now you've reassured me that's not true. Okay.
I think the data product notion, right? The central to whether it's mesh or fabric, you talked about it, we've all talked about it. Managing quality data in a way that's accessible is key.
Okay.
I think so. You gave as I said earlier, I think you gave a really good framework and guideline in terms of how to have a successful data product, the whole check-in, check-out process. It's a consistency aspect, kind of marketplace. Fantastic, very, very thorough. I just want to kind of throw in kind of more of a practitioner's view. That is, I don't want to see customers getting bogged down for 3 years trying to have all that in place before they deploy something, right? Because that's the mistake we've made in the last 10, 20 years. I think agility is actually very, very important. Again, I go back to what makes a data product kind of unique from data marts, right, that we've had for a while is that fast and easy consumption. Yes, you need a level of security and governance. Totally great, right? But if you don't ever get to that fast and easy consumption, you're never going to be able to justify building out the rest of the marketplace and that framework. Because if no one ever consumes something, this is what we've seen. We've already seen this many, many times with data warehouses and data lakes and catalogs, et cetera. If no one ever consumes, right, it actually impacts, right, the usability, viability, and even calls into question, right, relevance and governance. So that's the only thing I would just add. Right?
No, like Gartner, I'm just a big believer in the fabric because on day one or maybe week one, you can inject that agility into a moribund monolithic data environment.
Yeah.
Whereas, I got to give Paul credit, Rankin, because he had to build that self-service data platform first.
Props, man. Props to that guy.
Before you could, let these product teams loose, right? And that, I don't know how he did that. He did it real quickly.
Yeah.
So most companies can't move that fast. Matt, you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna kind of tack on to what Casey said. It's like, yeah, there's the technology, but the people in process of can kind of slow down, getting a mesh adopted. So you have to, be flexible there, and being able to get something people can use right away, as you were mentioning, I think is the right approach. And eventually things can be decentralized if you go in that direction, but that doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey.
Yeah, access data wherever it lives, right? And start to make it accessible in a quality way, and you kind of off to the races.
Yeah. All right. So we got like 3 minutes left. So I want to ask you guys a rapid fire question, and you have to give short answers. No more than 30 seconds. Okay. So the first rapid fire question is, what do you see as the biggest change in our industry in the next 18 to 24 months?
I think it's the shift away from IT push down, which has dominated the space for a long time, right? These tools are too complex, and so everything has to be pushed down from the top. And I think as a society, human beings have evolved. Company culture has also evolved, where I don't think people want to do that. The business does not want to do that, and so we're seeing more of, no, it's better to have IT and the corporate get involved once you have seen how we're using it, right? And at that point, when you have those data points, you can enforce it.
I'm going to give you the hook here. Matt, you got to be short here.
I'll just say one sentence, because I think we're going to see more of a decentralized approach to the ownership of data.
All right, you and Casey are on lockstep here. Rick?
I'm gonna agree with that, and I'm gonna add empowerment and collaboration at the edge, which is going to be really critical to success.
Okay, last question for you all. What is your product's biggest differentiator? Because people are here to learn about products, not just data products, but products they can buy and use internally. And that's what this whole TechVent's about, is to give people a short list of products. What's your key differentiator in 30 seconds or less, or actually maybe 15?
I'm going to go with it's a collaborative workspace, right? That engineers and analysts can work together, share and reuse, and work on the same stuff.
Cool. Matt and Casey,
I'll go. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah. So I'm Starburst, and our biggest product differentiator is to provide that single point of secured access for all your data. But in addition to that access point, we do the processing for you at fast speed, large scale, and at a low cost, from data lakes to databases to NoSQL systems to SaaS applications. We can process and access it all.
One point of access. Gotta love that. Casey, you get the last word here.
All right. I would say our biggest point of differentiation is we realize the fact that data analytics is a team sport. You have multiple personas. And so what Prometheum does is it actually allows multiple personas to work together or separately without having to go through multiple tools. And that means making things even as easy for non-technical folks. And I think we're very proud of the fact that we incorporated natural language, not just for search, but actually for the full creation of data products, all the way from the query to the visualization, just through natural language. I think that's still something that we do very, very well compared to other folks.
Awesome. Okay. Let's go back to our... All right, so I want to thank all our panelists here for a great conversation and enlightening us about data products, data mesh, and data fabric. And now, Kevin, you there? I know you're having some static on the line. Do you want me to take it from here?
Oh, can folks hear me okay?
Yeah, you got a little static, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Okay. So now's your chance to attend breakout sessions with our industry experts. Following the breakouts, we're going to have topic tables, and we encourage you to visit, where you can drill down even further on specific topics with our experts. And that's it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in 5 minutes. Pick a breakout, and we'll see you there.